Kame House lobby with the 2MK team. Today we are, as usual, playing Dragon Ball FighterZ. And we don't have any specific goals today. There may be some on-stream review of our usual little bits of information about how to play the game. But beyond that, feel free to join in. This is a neither stays on US East Coast lobby. We are generally, and today as always, in circle match priority lobby O2 in the US East Coast O2 region. We're not too picky about the lag, so feel free to join up if you think that it will be mostly okay. And if you want, you can avoid fighting anyone who you think will be a bad connection to you, or if you test it out and find it to be bad, this neither stays on. You can just rotate a little bit, probably. Neither stays on generally means that the winner of a match will play more often, but you can be assured that whether or not you win or lose, you will not be playing the next match unless there are a few people left in the lounge, which means you can move around and do whatever else you wanted to do. But once again, if you do win, your turn will come back around faster, so please bear that in mind. The pass code for the ring, which is, as you'd expect, outside of Kame House itself, is 2717. You can find this information in our stream title most of the time, as well as on our Twitter 2_MK_FGC. There's no massive new news coming out for this game too recently, at least not that I'm aware of. We're continuing to mostly focus on our minor adaptations to the balance changes and some of the restrictions that were placed on things like the use of assists. You will definitely see quite a few different fighting styles today, and a lot of rusty players trying to shake that rust off. This is functionally still a beginner lobby. At the end of the day, no matter how much one understands, practice is required, and we only practice this game in these lounges, which means you don't have to worry about getting beat up by any too heavy combos, except maybe by Omni Rapid, sorta. But your own correct understanding of how to play this game, whether that be in neutral or your understanding of your characters, is likely to be tested at least a bit. And if not, it probably indicates that you are a person who knows their combos or characters well enough that the ones being tested will be us. So as mentioned, likely to be quieter on the mic today, but particularly if we get new guests, or specific things need to be noted either about matchups, or just general flow of things that have been changed for characters or otherwise, may still get a few things said.
This should be a great fight! Ready? Fight it out!
力で来い。来い。行くぞ。もう終わりか。その程度か。邪魔って邪魔だ。すぐに終わらせてやる。トライハー。無駄だ。どうということはない。こっちだ。トライロ。俺が破れるだと。では諸君、ごきげんよう。貴様の攻撃など私にとっては蚊に刺されたようなものさ。
This should be a great fight! Ready? Let's go!すぐに終わらせてやる。協力してもらおう。許さんぞ。大丈夫か。地球ごと消えてんだけど。ここは握ってやる。せいぜい楽しませてくれよ。お願いします。話にならん。どうだ。逃がさないぞ。どうだ。よし。呼ばないか。じゃあ少しだけ。どうだ。いっぱい飛ばすぞ。さあ、楽しませてもらう。さて。そろそろさあ、さて地球ごと消えてんだけど。行くぞ。捕らえた。じゃじゃーん。どうだ。いっぱい飛ばすぞ。任せてください。お酒大に最後。行くぞ。よし。終わらせてやる。ついにこの様の登場だ。行って。甘い。やってみせる。それ。僕も加勢します。そこか。 頼ってばかりはいられない。これからも俺のこの手で勝つんだ。
Time to begin the match!
Today, Cosmic Wolf joins us as our newest beginner, let's put it that way. A member of the team who has not really gotten to try this game before, and I mean not basically at all. This game's structure in terms of controls is simple enough that most people can pick it up within a few minutes. The main things you would need to understand are the basic principles we mention all the time. If you can't figure out how to move forward, use a double tap of your light button to do so. And block a lot. I mean, a lot. The rest is usually a matter of having buttons either similar to the button setups you use in a different game, in terms of which button is light, which button is heavy, and so on, or one that makes sense based on one game you play with a very similar style of movement or characters. Usually the hardest part is that most games that are available right now don't actually have the same command for effectively throwing. You can set the Dragon Rush button, but this often takes up a space that you really wouldn't need to otherwise. In fact, Dragon Ball Fighters is fairly notorious for everyone needing to set different combination buttons based on whether or not they have a certain setup of their own. Basically, especially if you play it on stick, as Cosmic Wolf now does, it becomes a matter of realizing which two buttons are most far apart, and therefore which ones do I actually need to set. In most setups, this means that you don't really need to set the Dragon Rush button, as the light and medium buttons are relatively close together and can just be used like that. Super Dash can sometimes be close by, but a lot of people have a good reason to set a Super Dash button. Especially if, for whatever reason, they have put their special button slightly out of tune with the heavy button, which is actually the case here. No matter how Cosmic Wolf set up this, it was most likely going to be that the heavy button and special button were not too close to each other. Though interestingly, it turns out that the way this is actually made is that, in the end, the Super Dash button ended up being where special could be. There are still other relatively good reasons to not have the special button necessarily too close to the heavy button, depending on your playstyle, and therefore it may or may not work out for you. The key is to find something you're comfortable with, and the game does let you set up your button configs in lounges fairly easily. You can correct anything that's too stressful. The main difficulty normally comes, therefore, with activating your Sparking Blast, as this requires hitting 4 buttons at once, which depending on your stick setup might be difficult for you, or finding some combination of 3 that works easily because one of them is one that takes up other 2 buttons. But most of the time this is still likely to work out. Most of us can move the hands or even the thumb in such a way that you end up pressing 3 buttons, meaning that the only real question is, are these 3 buttons the ones you actually need all of the time, or do you risk activating something that you didn't want to if you miss the input?
その程度のパワーで俺を倒せると思っていたのか？気が高まる。溢れる。
Get ready for battle! Are you ready? Fight!
聞かせてもらおう。
楽しめそう。この攻撃だ。邪魔をするな。招待できますか。下がってよ。行くぞ。終わりだわ。すぐに行くぞ。許さんぞ。ありがとうございます。甘い。孫悟空、トライ。行くぞ。見えている。なんだ。この威力は終わらせてやる。どう
ということはない。
正当だ。さないぞ。さないぞ。正当だ。加勢しましょう。なんだと。さないぞ。邪魔だ。昨日の成果を見せてやる。遊びはもう終わりか。行くぞ。あの殺してやる。殺す。今楽にしてやる。応対だ。
茶番は終わりだ。無駄だ。トライ。 行くぞ。終わりだわ。行くぞ。邪魔だ。
この攻撃から切った。
見えている。
これでも止まれ。
どうということはなく、その程度か。
貴様の相手はこの僕だ。よっ。どうした。なんだ。まだまだ。
バカな。
俺が殺してやろう。
許さんぞ。
殺してやる。いいだろう。
地球は僕が守る。クリリンさん、引退しても力は衰えていないな。僕も見習わなくちゃ。
Get ready for battle! Are you ready? Fight!
なんなんだ。行くぞ。落ちろ。
登場ね。これで合わせるかしら。
じゃあ少しだ
そこね。荷台を見せてあげる。まだよ。合わせるかしら。
何楽しめそう。死ね。
冗談じゃない。そこね。
さあ楽しませてもらおうか。
そこ。
この程度か。
お願い。そこ。
さて協力してもらおうか。俺が殺してやる。何なんだ。
覚悟はいい？負けないせんや。それ。
いかんぞ。 スピードには自信がある。さてさっさとしろ。受けてみろ。暇つぶしにはなったな。
Among the team, DeWolf is best known for his relatively relentless offense once close, as he is totally capable of at least switching to a defensive stance when the situation doesn't necessarily support the use of long-range buttons to control space. This means that Just Vine's methods for dealing with this often involve moving away at particular times, or specifically spacing herself so that it is at least looks like there should be a way to hit. The main problem with this is that neither Vegeta nor Cell is particularly great at whiff punishing without committing as well, meaning that there's a lot more practice involved in the process of getting to that point. Since both these characters usually whiff punish with either specials or moves that don't necessarily lead to much damage, it can cause it to be somewhat drawn out, meaning that one often needs to use assists to extend the combos or help out, and therefore, once reduced to no such assists, getting damage is much harder. Fortunately, it also works the opposite way, in that the character best suited for staying out of their way and clipping them to death slowly while using a lot of meter is Gotenks, meaning that he can, in fact, act as the anchor in that matchup.
ついな。貴様は俺が倒す。やってみせる。届き者が。終わりだ。
Kame brings into this game his skills at zoning and counter zoning, which work out relatively well against Omni-Rabbit, but as he is starting from the beginning, it has to build up all of the internal team strategy tactics that everyone else in the team has been developing for basically a year, even in some cases with the character changes that they've had to deal with. Outputting the damage and, in certain cases, controlling particular aspects of less straightforward neutral are going to be a bit of a struggle at first. The main thing in this game is to recognize when a scramble has occurred, and that's the sort of thing you build up by experience, even though we can technically get some of that experience by poking at the DBFZ bot.
Brace yourself for the coming battle! Goku, win.
いずれまた敵になると思うとワクワクすっけどゾクゾクもすんな。
Time to begin the match. Ready? Let's go.
招待できますか。大丈夫か。行くぞ。まだまだ。よっ。
すぐに終わらせてやる。受けてみろ。しまっ。
大丈夫ですか。
無駄だ。協力してもらおう。
待て。どうした。
許しませんぞ。
クリリさんお願いします。
無駄だ。無駄だ。さて。地球ごと消えてなくなれ。無駄だ。じゃあ少しだ
加勢します。
In terms of the matchup with Omni Rabbit, Just Fight has much less reason to specifically try to save both Hanks for last. But choosing Vegeta to potentially be the first to fall if that option is given does have quite a few benefits. Specifically, that this team is the one that Vegeta, while he does not necessarily get hard countered by anyone near, he does not do as well without the assist from the other two, as he is more of a neutral style character, and Omni Rabbit's team are both good at playing neutral, sticking close, and bypassing neutral in particular ways, with their relative weakness on certain conversions, air game, and defense. Vegeta is not the most pressury character, certainly not on his own, and therefore the situation tends to shift. between Gotenks and Cell, however, mostly it works out as Gotenks is more than capable of setting up Dragon Rush style things when Omni Rabbit switches to defense, and Cell is good at making Omni Rabbit switch to defense. This fight, however, is a lot more lopsided in that Broly can literally just ignore nearly everything the opposing team does, and without the group tactics yet developed, it's more so going to come down to whether or not Broly can be stopped. Amara must therefore decide whether or not to try to just have Broly do all the work, or save him for last.
貴様、本気で俺を倒すつもりか。トライ。
調子に乗るな。
なんだ。行くぞ。
驚き者が。やれ。逃がさ。終わりだ。なんだ。主義がやらない罪人が。また。今夜は心地よい眠りにつけそうです。ベジータ。逃がさ。後ろ。俺がここだ。逃がさ。破れるとは。
すぐに終わらせてやる。出るなんだ。行くぞ。続けてみろ。楽しめそう。
見えている。トライ。
この程度か。この私にバリアを張らせ
トライ。
邪魔だ。落ち惜しかったな。
トライ。
全体この私この俺だ。クズめ。殺すぞ。クズ。ザクだ。行くぞ。殺してやる。こうだ。どうだ。感づくよ。セルがいい。無駄だ。このイルカ。
どうということはない。
行くぞ。
トライ。お前たちに勝ち目などない。諦めろ。敵も味方もなく暴れるだけか。こちらも協力し合うつもりなどない。
It's time to face your opponent! It's all or nothing! Fight!
楽しめそうだ。じゃあ少しだ。
任せてください。
すぐに落ちしまったこの程度さあ行くぞ。
終わらせてやる。
そろそろ殺してしまうか。
なんなん
さあ受けてみろ。
逃がさないぞ。
ささばきのカメハメハカメハメハ
いっぱい飛ばすぞ。
俺は殺してやろう。
なんなんどうだ。行くぞ。捕らえた。どうだ。
楽しめそう
ここだ。いっぱい飛ばすぞ。どうだ。修行の成果を見せて。
楽しめそういいだろう。
なんなん行くぞ。なんなん楽しめそうね。お前人造人間なんだな。18号さんの仲間か。危ねえ。油断しないように気をつけねえとな。
Time to begin the match! Get ready! Go!
So once again we're faced with strategies based on which characters are most useful against which. This is actually an interesting phase because Goku Black does relatively well handle catching Gotenks, but one might want to do that a little later in the match. But from the other side, similarly, Just Boy wants to get rid of Goku Black so that Gotenks is free to move. Cell, while very capable of a lot of things, in this case the benefit is both that Just Boy is more comfortable in the mirror match even, and even if anything happens to our orange Cell, Gotenks handles Cell relatively well at this level. Since most of Sal's attacks don't exactly target the space that Gotenks spends a lot of time in, but Gotenks can actually attack from there, even if he does not hurt very much when he does. Vegeta doesn't track Gotenks as well, but Gotenks also can't simply just move about without thinking about it, because eventually he will fall, and eventually his father has basically full screen moves that will nab him. Assists help a lot with this. Once one realizes that you are going to fall into a space where you can be attacked, Cell and Vegeta cover this space well enough that any attempts from the opposite Vegeta to get in to hit him could at least be thwarted. Combine that with the use of Meter to Vanish when Vegeta does actually try to catch up with a different style of attack, and he has a genuinely hard time catching his son. Or his son merged with, you know. Forcing him to use his Super Dash more often, but as long as he doesn't do it too predictably, it tends to work out still, meaning that he has a lot more options than most characters. Another good one is the Instant Air Dash and 2H in the air, as this tends to move him in ways that would bother Gotenks' approaches at least, and force him to keep on running away.
This should be a great fight! Get ready! Fight!
One of the most important things for Omni Rabbit in this matchup is deciding when to backdash. He doesn't necessarily have to stay out, but backdashing is super important due to the range of the normals and therefore the tendency to need to defend against a lot of things that the Wolf Team does. Defending, along with Omni Rabbit's general speed of reaction against certain things, means that at least some of the options relative to Dragon Rushes and Super Dashes won't get caught. And honestly, with Omni Rabbit's style, one can't afford even for the shortest time to miss that sort of reaction if you're not absolutely certain that you can out-damage your opponent. Basically, in any match where you cannot be certain that you do more damage, this particular team often benefits from backdashing at least a little, unless it's relatively sure that the opponent will get a hit off by catching the backdash. Since these characters are not the greatest at doing that in the most situations, it tends to mean that the only downside to doing the backdash is not having a way to hit them. But zoning this team is not super hard, and their assists are not the type that tend to cause a lot of problems here. Meaning that once one has gotten started, but realized that you've been blocked out of your own offense, or just had to play neutral in a way you didn't like. It's better to backdash than to go into the defensive stance at the end, especially since Omni Rabbit as a player defaults to the defense, meaning that consciously when he does have to backdash, it will work out, but whenever forced into a stressed situation, the backdash is not likely to happen, but this still helps as it does mix up the two interactions enough that the opponent can't necessarily go about undoing this every time. They would at least have to move to the point of saying, I know that you are stressed and therefore won't backdash, or that you are definitely not stressed and therefore will backdash, so I'm going for this hard call out on your backdash.
Maximum power! Win!
こう見えていくつも死闘を繰り広げてきたんだ。舐めてもらっちゃ困るぜ。
Interestingly, and perhaps somewhat frustratingly for Omni Rabbit, DBFZ is exactly the kind of player who can in fact work that out.
Get ready for a Dragon Ball Rumble! It's all or nothing! Fight!
甘い聞かせてもらおう
邪魔だ殺してやるうわなんだ無駄ださあやるじゃないかさてさてさまたさてスピードが自信があるんだ邪魔だなんなら何しつこいやつだその程度かなどうということはない孫悟空なんだ見えている悪は滅びろ捕らえるどうということはない待ってやるなんだ どうだこれでどうだカカロットこの俺がお荷物になるとはなかなかやるじゃないやっうわさてまた
茶番は終わりだ。協力してもらおうか。どうということはない。この私にバリーを俺が破れるだと。不意打ちでも狙っていたのか。残念だったな。
It's time to face your opponent! It's all or nothing! Let's go!
食事のもう終わりか交代だしまった負けないわよこっちよおいで生きたそこか遊びはもう終わりか行くぞもう終わりかどこへ行くんだがしまった無駄よ甘い無駄よ各自とあちらの私を
すぐに終わらせてやる。この程度か。
交代できますかうさんとよっクレディさん
この程度か。
うい
無駄だ。どうしたか譲ってやる。
おて兄ちゃん
すぐに終わらせてやる。さて地球ごと消えてなくなれ。全体のこの
怪我しても知らないわよ負けないわよ怪我をしても知らないわよ覚悟はいい？覚悟はお味はどうかしら？終わりじゃない！受けてみなさい！これで最後よ！大丈夫か？
戦いの勘が鈍ってんな。また今度手合わせをお願いしてもいいですか。よろしくお願いします。
A fierce showdown is about to begin! It's all or nothing! Go!
聞かせてもらおう。
There is no specific member of Amara's team that is necessarily good at catching or keeping up with Goten. However, working together, they can often manage something. It's therefore most important to do this with exactly the configuration you see here. Unfortunately, this forces Goku out most of the time, and means that Cell can be switched in. In terms of the strategy of how to play through a match, this is what we will consider to be one where you are forced to be the defensive player in the entirety. In other words, your opponent gets to basically decide which characters you get to have out, by which ones of theirs they bring in. And if you're not able to do a lot of damage to their characters, the situation slowly shifts in their favor no matter what you do. One of the more interesting ways to deal with this is to recognize first of all that it's going to happen fairly early on, and from there, look for opportunities to vanish or use sparking, as you're seeing here, to keep the opponent on their toes and last long enough to put one of their characters closer to the point where you could actually get a kill. Once their formation is broken, it tends to be a little bit easier and you get more breathing. Still, while a lot of the time we would not want to use up resources early on into a fight, when you find yourself being forced to play defensive in this sense, where your opponent seems to be controlling all of the matchup space, it's often more necessary to do it. It's particularly helpful because of the fact that if you were relying on assists, activating or sparking, even if you were only able to do so for a short time, does cause your assist to recharge faster. And this situation is not necessarily untenable, but it's really hard to deal with. Jiren has no meter, no sparking, not much health, and had to deal with Gotenks at the time, one of the harder characters to keep up with. The situation is somewhat better now, but obviously already facing a relatively heavy deficit. Does he pull the cover fast? Apparently does.
どうということはない。さあなんだ俺が破れるだと。
That is one of the heaviest parts of this game. Whereas in other games, your capacity to understand the matchup can at least somewhat be mitigated by your player's skill, and you're not often put in heavily disadvantaged situations, at least not in our generation of relatively balanced games. In this game, the level of difficulty of your matchup is somewhat decided by which of your characters is first, your strategy going into it, and who manages to defeat one member of the other team first, as this can cause the matchup to become relatively lopsided relatively fast.
Time to begin the match. It's all or nothing. Go!
そこね見せてあげる負けないわよ
Very well spaced up recovery there, but the initial use of the sparking to confirm from the corner was a big help, and generally, particularly with characters who already have good mix-ups out of their super dash, adding the sparking to it, the fact that sparking makes your super dash advantaged on block, and changes the mix-ups you can do from it, mean that any conversion tends to be useful. If you don't believe that your opponent can make the 2H, or that you have some method of shifting the situation so that when they try they get hurt, saving your position until that defensive moment you just saw, where one can take one hit and immediately convert using sparking, is a good way to try to get advantage when you're down to your last character. If you happen to get opened up and hit with a big combo, sometimes you still need to do this, even if that combo involved a lot of blue health, as you simply aren't going to get enough of an opening otherwise. But this does of course depend on player skill. It's just an option that is being mentioned because you might as well learn it, especially if your skills in the defensive department are enough to get your opponent to eventually make some small mistake, especially if they're not used to the idea that small mistakes lead into drastic shifts in the situation.
楽しませてもらおうか。許さずこの程度か。俺はスーパーベジータだ。どうやら修行で差がつきすぎてしまったらしいな。
Time to begin the match! It's all or nothing! Fight it out!
殺し すぐに終わらせてやる。
僕も加勢します。相手だ。どうだ。ここだ。
すぐに終わらせてやる。全体にこの
地球は僕が守る。大人になって一緒に戦うなんてなんだか不思議な感じですね。
This should be a great fight!
ている。
俺が殺してやろう。殺してやるクズめ。楽しめそう。
下がってよ。
おけばやろう。
いやいや、もっとか。このイルカは
大丈夫か。
聞かせてもら
なんなんだ。
下がってよ。深くその程度か。深く来い。なんだなんだと。その程度か。いやいや、もっとか。バカな。
お前たちはどこか遠くへ。ザコだ。どうだ。楽しめそう。どうだ。何。おのベジータ様を失望させるなよ。どうだ。ほらそらそら調子に乗り上がってファイナルフェ
The other main strategy which we have just seen employed is the idea that Broly doesn't necessarily have the capacity to hunt down or make sure he hits both heights as much, but he can definitely push the kid to the corner and force certain interactions. The big downside being that once one has lost Broly, if it happens to go that way, the other two opponents in the matchup are harder to deal with anyway. Making this a relatively tough fight from multiple directions.
不意打ちでも狙っていたのか。残念だったな。
It's time to face your opponent!
貴様が俺を倒すだと見せてみよう、愚かなサイヤ人よ。
ブラック、俺は貴様を許さない。
Are you ready?
終わりだ。小賢しい。
神の力を見るがいい。うわすぐに終わらせてやる。この攻撃だ。さてと無駄だ。俺にさせて逃がす。逃がさん。クリリンさん。大丈夫ですか。や俺様だ。そっか。許さんぞ。行くぞ。トランクさん。まだまだ。俺にさしてもらえ。カンナすぐに終わらせてやる。スピードには自信があるんだ。行くぞ。まだまだ。俺も結構やるじゃん。ちょっとは様になったかな。
A fierce showdown is about to begin! Are you ready? Go!
Here we see a demonstration of the same principle. Broly was in fact used in order to push on Gotenks, but lost quite a lot of health in the process of chasing him down, at least sometimes. In this case, it's not as big a deal as Broly is not as needed to deal with the other two members of the team. And the team's specific way of operation usually means that Broly does in fact get to recover somewhat. It is, however, still more work, as getting two Gotenks with Broly when you're faced with as many assists as possible means that the situation is still such that the wolf is the one that ends up on the defensive side, strategically. Even if he chooses to leave Broly in, he can't afford to necessarily lose him as much, because he will lose some factors. But it's actually more so that Broly is better at using the meter in this matchup than the other two members of the team, oddly enough. If one can get rid of Gotenks, it's become slightly less true, but overall, Broly's various Vanish base, mix-ups, and similar help a lot more, meaning that if you decided to take this path, you'll often find that the meter gets used, as you've just seen there, with Android 21 immediately in order to get as much advantage as possible, rather than relying on building it up to do any trickery later. The result is that now we have a Broly that, despite having a non-trivial amount of health and the capacity to possibly take out both Cell or Gotenks if need be, simply might not have the meter available to create enough mix-ups to actually beat Vegeta.
お前と違って俺はサイヤ人のエリート戦士だからな。何が目的かは知らんが、俺が貴様を信用することなどない。
Brace yourself for the coming battle!
While Trunks is actually relatively strong against the immediate super dash where he's not thinking about anything else, a correctly used Z-change can at least put some stress on him. Depends heavily on the characters involved a lot of the time. And how much those characters are capable of making Trunks worry about something else. The total outcome of this is that it's relatively easy for Amara to get Jiren out of the fight without having to worry about whoever she brings in immediately getting hit. Goku being one of those characters that can actually keep up with Gohan in standard footsies means that getting this sort of situation, and therefore advantage from Broly's side, is a little bit easier. But once the tables are turned, getting back to a positive situation would have been a bit harder, if not for the fact that Trunks is once again the one in. Climax debate, but I'm not even sure that Amirata even remembered by that time that she had activated this spell. However, we're brought down to Broly versus Krillin, and Broly can just deflect or literally negate half of Krillin's actual methods for dealing with the situation. Broly's nullification field is among his better tools in this game, especially against characters who don't easily deal with his longer range buttons. And Krillin, short stuff as he is definitely almost exactly that character.
fight is anybody's guess.
どうだこの色、美しいだろう。
また一匹虫けらが死にに来たか。
Ready? Let's go!
This matchup is very similar to what we're normally seeing when these two play Street Fighter 5. The difference here is that Bali's nullification field really changes the way that Kazunori has to approach this, as he has to rely more on getting into position for grabs. In this case, just the normal Dragon Rush will do. But the question is how aggressive Wolf actually wants to be at any given moment, as the Dragon Rush will normally get stopped or countered if he's actually going forward. The requirement, therefore, to somehow convince Wolf that it's necessary to defend, similar to how it's done in Mikali versus Alex, and then get the quick grab. Fortunately, all three characters on this team are relatively capable of doing this. Although their methods of convincing that the defense needs to be done differ at least slightly. The change to the game that does not allow you to call assists while in block stunning the same way as before means that it's a lot easier to get opponents to that mental state. Otherwise, before they would have just blocked through all your stuff and then figured, okay, I will stop you with my assist on your next attack. But Wolf got around that time, an option that is not normally available to him.
Time to begin the match! Ready? Fight!
これ以上好きにさせんぞ。お前はもう終わりだ。完全に切れ込んでしまえ。どうしようと。やってくれる。してやっと。しまった。遊びは終わりだ。カスにくたばれバリン全力でいくぞ。何なんだ。魔をするな。行くぞ。まだまだ。オラが相手だ。一気に行くぞ。クビルさん、お願いします。
全力で来い。ここだ。この威力は見えている。捕らえるか。見えている。捕らえる。なんだ。
まだまだ。
この威力はその程度か。悪は滅びろ。どうということはない。なんだ。ま
だまだ。
俺が破れるだと。
We've been considering for a while now that if you really want to know Deijuin at a high level, you have to get used to all of his weird cross-up stuff. But honestly, we're not sure even how much weird cross-up stuff there is.
Time to begin the match! It's all or nothing! Let's go!
しまった。負けないわよ。絶対に許され。バカな。そこでおいで。そこで突撃。まあまあだな。
俺様一人いれば十分だ。ビッグバンアタック。ここを見ている。
This match is often seen as a matter of figuring out whether or not Vegeta can hold mid-screen using assists from Buu or Bardock when the opponent tries to get past the zoning. If this is done cleanly enough, it becomes difficult to trap Vegeta in the corner, specifically because one can switch to Buu when the opponent tries for an attack, and Buu will usually manage to get that out pretty quickly. Any hesitations involved here will often cause Vegeta to be the one able to get out, and the problem resolves itself. This does require a lot of precision and focus though, and any timings that shift relative to your movement or whether or not you can switch or use assists put extra stress on the player doing the zoning.
Android 21 win.
どうよ、私の力。同じバイオ人造人間でも性能が違うのよ。
Time to begin the match.
But back to our relatively straightforward match. This team does have the capacity to attack from mid-air relatively well, even go flat. Which is good for staying out of the way against Omni Rabbit's team if they're not approaching. If they are approaching, then one can zone from the ground, but zoning from the air becomes a little bit more difficult for this team as a general thing. If you want full zoning, you often have to devote yourself to it a bit more. But staying on the ground and the opponent trying to get over is easily covered by the assists, meaning that Goku Black can mostly set up the situation consistently for himself by calling assists at the right moments and not worrying about it too much.
あ間に合ってういよっ
無駄だ。そこは譲ってやろう。そこだ。
まずいそらそら
それならどうだ。
このベジータ様を失望させるなよ。
愚か愚かどうした。
じゃあ少しだ。
役べるとは
すぐに終わらせてやる。そろそろズワッズワッ砕け切れ。
やるな。
ズワッさあ受けてみろ。無駄だ。そろそろこの程度か。全体を
Oof, the slightest of misses on that jump in. Cell does not have the best jump in buttons by nearly anyone's standards, meaning that he usually has to do some mid-air trick once he does start. But since he mostly has to do the trick, jumping in with raw buttons, especially on characters like these, usually means that you don't really have an option anyway.
行きますよベジータさん
俺様が
さすがベジータさん。なんて強さだ。
Well, not so many fireworks that time around, but
クリリンさん、引退しても力は衰えていないな。
we get to see
僕も見習わなくちゃ。
Cosmo's progression from there. Well, that's probably it for him for the night. This launch itself will be continuing for another 40 to 45 minutes. So feel free to join us if you want to get your own practice in.
This should be a great fight. Ready? Let's go.
どうということはない。
俺が殺してやろう。このイルカは
見えている。
終わりだ。
聞かせてもらう。
スピードには自信があるんだ。さて、邪魔だ。完全体のこの
Since Broly vs. Broly tends to favor the more aggressive player, you can probably expect to see a switch fairly soon. But no, not quite enough. Another advantage of characters like Jiren who actually specifically have those sliding forward mediums is that the opponent's attempts to get over them in particular situations tend to lead to you losing advantage entirely, since you end up landing too far away from their enemy hits and then they Dragon Rush or something. It's just the previous principle we were dealing with, but you have to pay even more attention, as he has so many other options to deal with situations that don't have anything to do with that slide. And a lot of the moves that move him forward just enough that you deciding, okay, I'll just go over your head, means that now the Jiren player, who's probably expecting this, knows where you're going to end up, far better than you understand where they are. This match, though, is a matter of zoning. So we see Goku immediately use some meter to get some advantage and therefore create a better situation for the zoning paying off in terms of actually winning. This forces the raw vanish, as you see there. And makes it really hard for her to do anything in particular.
Jiren と協力か。がっかりさせねえようにしねえとな。
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess! Ready? Go! Counter!
これがスーパーサイヤ人ブルーだ。
俺が相手だ。やばい。
サイヤ人の底力を侮るなよ。
全力で行くぞ。
こう見ていろ。点数をつけるとすればこんなものか。やろう。目玉だ。ここを見ていろ。逃がすか。ゆっくり眠らせてやる。二度と起きないようにな。この俺を超えてみろ。簡単には超えさせないがな。
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess!
まずお前から血祭りにあげてやる。
Get ready! Go!
食事の時
どこへ行く。
Strategically speaking, one therefore has to try to get rid of Broly first, in order to make the whole thing work. But as there's no specifically good way to do that, it's a matter of carefully switching between characters so that none of them take too much damage before the situation shifts, or that your opponent is somehow inspired to switch Broly out. Unfortunately, this usually means that since you're not in the dominant position, there's no easy way to finish him off and prevent him from recovering any health he has lost. Long-term strategies therefore rely a lot on forcing the other characters in the team to use up more meters. Meaning that if you are forced to bring Broly in, he's not able to get away from things as easily with his Vanish or similar. Once Vegeta has gained enough meter though, he can be the one to finish Broly off, in that case more so failing to drop that execution than anything else. Understanding which character you need the most for the matchup to do particular things is also a good way to determine whether or not you need to use sparking at particular times to save them, especially in situations where you want to switch them out, but your opponent knows that you really want to do that.
Android 21 win!
どうよ私の力。同じバイオ人造人間でも性能が違うのよ。
As we wind down one by one and the 4th of July fireworks outside ramp up, we get to Amara's last match of the night. This is again about the fact that it's relatively easy to pressure or stress Trunks in some way and then get Jiren out and swap for Goku. You don't even have to swap for Goku. You can, in fact, as just seen, swap for Broly, with the expectation that certain things have to be built up or done, since Goku benefits a bit more neutral from having at least a little bit of neutral to work with. And trying to have to earn it the hard way is not the greatest thing against Trunks in here. If the opponent switched immediately to Gohan, then maybe, but now this is a more comfortable position. Specifically, that with the 2 assists available, it's a little bit harder for Trunks to take control entirely. Forcing him to move a little bit slower, zone through things and make heavy committed attacks, and basically get caught in the loop of available assists from Goku's side. Once you've gotten your opponent to consider heavy committed attacks like that, you get that sort of switch you've just seen. Good recover timing from Krillin. That is the same thing more or less. Once you expect with some certainty that your opponent is going to go for an approaching attack, you can use your Z change as a counter to that attack. Sorry, Jiren actually has a really long recovery on that move. It's just that you nearly never know just because it takes up all the space in front of him. Similarly, if you really want, you can even try to go for super dashes as you've just seen, because you actually believe that your opponent is unwilling to make any rushing attacks so that they don't have to face your Z change. Teams that don't have a good sticky assist, good ways to make sure that they can reach you in the corner without you being able to retaliate, always have to deal with this mix-up if they try to get in by coming through the air. But most teams such as this can't come along the ground in the same way as the safety of it completely vanishes. Especially against a team like this who have counters, zoning, good whiff punishers, and basically cross-up level 3 supers. This is not a group of fighters that you can just hit crush medium and be fine. Unfortunately, simply because of how the situation is set up, Goku's level 3 super is not a good counter to people trying to specifically beat you up by moving toward you. This setup is a little more difficult. Broly doesn't have enough health to really threaten Gohan, and therefore Gohan should immediately do exactly what you just saw. Put a lot of stress on Jiren using the elbow, and try to avoid this. But the danger has dropped. With 4 bars of meter though, it's difficult for Gohan to strongly lose out from here. So he went for the hard call out, and the second one actually. But he simply doesn't have enough opportunities without meter to go forward at Gohan at the ranges that we were seeing.
戦いの感が鈍ってるな。
So while it was close, that brings out one more competitor for the night. And we have about 20 minutes of stream left.
なんだか不思議な感じですね。
If you have a character who has good frontal mix-ups, basically your opponent can't just hit buttons and approach you, like Broly. The reason this is so helpful is because they cannot attempt to do so by using a multi-hit move or a fake-out, given that you can use the Raw Vanish as a reaction to the fake-out. Raw Vanish is one of the most interesting whiff punishes available in this game. It does not work on moves that advance extremely far or quickly, and it only really works as a very tightly timed whiff punch. Specifically that if you attempt to do it because you think your opponent is going to do a move, most of the time you'll actually miss. You have to have confirmed they did a move and then try it. Fortunately, it is a single button for most of us, and depending on how your assists are available, usually because you have been playing neutral up until that point, it can be a really effective one. It's particularly true when the opponent's moves involve leaving the ground just a little bit, rather than specifically going high into the air or approaching on the ground directly. Vanish does a better job of targeting than most things in that situation.
こんなものか。しまった。逃がすか。来たまえ。ビッグバンチャーズ。目玉だ。ここを見ている。
So we find ourselves back in that situation of very, very specific and very targeted Vegeta zoning. But this does strain the character, he does lose a lot of health. Even if it's just in small interactions. That was probably the literal absolute borderline of a kill, but it has paid off quite heavily. With Paragon, there is not specifically a character with the long enough range and enough coverage of the air to deal with both Bardock and Kid Buu easily. The key now will be deciding from both sides when to activate their sparking and how to use it to survive things. Kozuki Dynasty seems to have gone with the longer method, but without much success today. Specifically, saving the sparking to use on Kid Buu for that conversion and big damage using amount of meter available.
貴様の攻撃など私にとっては蚊に刺されたようなものさ。
But as we are down to 3 active players, she'll get her chance again in a moment.
初めから全力で
Are you ready? Fight it out!
じゃあ少しだけ行くぞ。
With the Wolves team, there is no need to switch. Broly is the character wanted in to begin with, and the main difference is how well he stands up against Trunks with the two particular assists available. But with his health depleted enough that he actually has to fight this way, 21 comes back in. Under 21 soaks up a lot of meter by necessity, especially now that she no longer keeps the moves that she absorbs permanently at all. Basically, she gets one use of it, and then it's gone. This is not actually too stressful for her fighting style, as she turned out to mostly be a strong command grab style character using just the moves themselves. But you definitely can't build an adaptive full playstyle around the idea of I have this move now and therefore can do this thing. In a game of relatively simple character strategies, she's probably now among the most complicated, simply because of that factor. Most of the rest of the characters in this game are looking at 1 meter, specifically the one at the bottom of the screen, and thinking about assists only. For her, you have to plan fairly heavily from the very beginning, and when things don't go your way, you have to constantly adapt that plan while still trying to play at max level. You see, therefore, against the high necessity of that backdash, and the placement of it sometimes within Omni Rabbit's own forward pressure. It also helps to buy time to build back up assists that you might need to stop things that Cell does. This is not necessary for the other 2 characters on that team, but it definitely comes up in the Cell situation. Cell is a character who moves himself through a lot of space when making his attacks. He's able to attack from multiple strange positions, but he does pass through the entirety of the space between most of the time, and when he doesn't hit all that hard. Meaning that depending on what assist you're using or your understanding of the character's position, you can sometimes negate him by calling the assist and moving forward, specifically not blocking, and it will cover all of his vectors.
This should be a great fight! It's all or nothing! Let's go!
A very heavy requirement on Kanzaki Dynasty's part in this game, though, is to learn to simply not attack at certain spaces. Unlike many games where there's not enough on the screen to truly be distracting to the opponent, and then instant attacks from air are somewhat less available. This game allows for a lot of options in terms of baiting, especially with the characters she uses. We have both visual cover in certain situations, and overall cover as well, as in your opponent actually cannot respond. But not being able to respond doesn't mean that they can't block correctly. Sometimes, in that scenario, you just want to reposition yourself to the perfect spot and realize that they can't do anything about it if you set it up right in the first place. In a sense, it is a strange type of hit confirm, recognizing that your opponent probably didn't want to do anything, and reacting accordingly to this lack of action. Sometimes it means actually going for the hit, and sometimes it means sitting literally where you think is best to sit, so that nothing bad can happen to you. The neutral heavy stance and style means that assists are often available, especially to Bardock, to cause exactly this interaction. And at worst, the opponent doesn't get to hurt him that much. He's not an easy character to pin down and cause pain to. Approaching him leads to the same thing we were mentioning before, about using the Z change as a counterattack to that scenario. It's in fact something you can just remember as a general thing. Characters who are good in neutral in this game can get the opponent to not want to do things, benefit from a lot of attention spent deciding if you want to Z-change in the moment where you decide to attempt to reposition. The opponent tries to get in and hit you in that moment, and finds that the character they're trying to hit is no longer there.
クリリンさん、引退しても力は衰えていないな。僕も見習わなくちゃ。
It's time to face your opponent! Get ready!
じゃあ少しだ
We now drift into our final match of the night with some strong defensive play from dual side. Broly is not a character you can walk your way in on in most situations. And as you can see there, just trying to approach him in the wrong way often results in getting grabbed, armored, any number of little things. Which is a large part of the reason why we consider that matchup to be at least somewhat disadvantaged for Trunks. It's not necessarily that Trunks has a whole lot of trouble dealing with Broly trying to get in on him, but interestingly Trunks doesn't do that well getting in on Broly. This of course depends on your assists, as does everything else in the game, but the number of assists that can really help Trunks get in on Broly are not a lot. Really made it. But also quite worth it. This is one of those situations where, with enough awareness, one Dragon Rush will in fact cause a cash out on most of that. And since Wolf is technically already in the defensive mindset, that sort of damage is easy to get. An opponent who is being difficult to deal with in that way is one you can often throw around very similarly. But do note that in order for this to work, you must do the Dragon Rush basically raw. You cannot do the Dragon Rush at the end of the combo because most of the time now it's just a sliding knockdown and you don't even have the option to fling out the opposing character. You can however do it after a reset, and that means that depending on your shifts, it still works out for you. Even without meter now, Krillin can at least stand up to 21, as she does consistent damage, but not like groundbreaking damage. She's one of the characters who requires the most setup to make sure that her better stuff lands. But, depending on the team, once you do have the assist, it works out fine. Broly coming in to throw the meter at things doesn't work out.
してやるぞ。どうだ。楽しめそうね。
Tomorrow we should be having our Kame, or Dead or Alive 6 lobby, which we have still not decided exactly what to call. So you can expect that at the same time, even though much like our Street Fighter lobbies, it is likely to last less than 2 hours. Generally those lobbies are for beginners in an enforced way, and a bunch of neither stays on stuff happens there as well. On Monday we should be back to Street Fighter V Mishmash and Battle Lounge, and since there was no Tuesday train this week, there's likely to be a Tuesday train next week, and therefore no Sandbag Casuals on Wednesday. That will bring us back around to Thursday's Kame House, possibly, but there's quite a lot of stuff going on next week, and therefore we can't be absolutely certain that we'll get all the same things. We'll let you know tomorrow and Monday though. For tonight, this has been Rillian along with Team 2MK. Good luck with your training, and good night everyone.